Good morning, everyone attending the RTA's meeting of the Board of Directors. I am getting the high sign from the secretary that we are now live. So I want to review the guidelines for our meeting today. For those members who are here in person, please turn your microphones on when you wish to speak and off when you are finished. So we may limit the mics that are on at any one given time. I'll call on you with questions or comments for those who are here in person. For those calling in remotely, please keep your audio on mute as much as possible to minimize background noise, which may impair the recording, and this is obviously being recorded. When you have a question or comment, please raise your virtual hand, and the board secretary will call on board members who have raised their virtual hand one at a time. And when she calls on you, do what I forget to do a lot of times, and that's lower your hand if you're on us from a remote location. I now will officially call the meeting of the Board of Directors of the Regional Transportation Authority to order. And will everybody in attendance please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Good morning, everyone. Director Alvarez, Director Carey.
Here.
Director Colson.
Here.
Director Gorman. Director Groven.
Here.
Director Jenkins. Director Katarik.
Here.
Director Lewis. Director Mondero.
Here.
Director Rotondo.
Here.
Director Roth. Director Ryan.
Here.
Director Sager. Director Sonoyka.
Present.
Director Walker.
Here.
And Chairman Dillard.
Present.
We have
a quorum.
13.
JD Ross, I've spoken to him a couple times in the last couple of days, is under the weather and will not be here today, but he's doing fine and recovering well. And Director Lewis, I know this will come as a shock to a lot of people, but he's on mass transit that's been slowed down on his way here. But he is on mass transit, so it's one of our service boards that has delayed him or something going on out there. But he's on his way, and he's on mass transit, so it's a good day. Now that we've established a physical quorum, our board secretary has received notice from Director Rotondo, and we heard him answer the roll, indicating he cannot attend in person. And pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, he's deemed admitted unless any of you have an objection. Seeing no objection, he is admitted. I want to welcome our new board member representing suburban Cook County, replacing Director Yonan this morning, and that's Mayor Lara San Wink. Is that how we should pronounce it? Is that the proper pronunciation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Lara Sonoyka.
Excellent.
You're there. Thanks.
It took me one meeting to how to pronounce Dr. Sager's name properly. Why don't you just give us a little bit about your background and welcome. You're a great addition to our board, so welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the public and the board this morning. Again, my name is Lara Sonoyka. I have been serving as the mayor of the city of Rolling Meadows since 2023, and prior to that, serving as alderman for my ward since 2019. Been involved in transit since around that same time as well. In 2019, being involved with the Northwest Municipal Conference Transportation and Bicycle and Pedestrian Committees. Over the summer, I've been very involved with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and working with the proposed NETA bill that was just signed by the governor on Tuesday, and then appointed by Cook County to serve for suburban Cook County in November. So I'm very much looking forward to serving on the board. It's quite an honor, and to be able, especially during this time, to help with the transition for RTA is again, very exciting. So thank you.
Thank you. And as we've learned from Dr. Sager and Director Carey, former mayors and local officials are great additions to this board. We know you have a good background and an interest in transit. So again, you're a perfect appointee and welcome. Item 3, I guess we begin with today, is the approval of the minutes from the board meeting held on November 20, 2025. Any questions or comments on those board meetings? If not, how about a motion and a second? Director Walker moves, seconded by Director Groven, that we approve the minutes from our last board meeting in item 3. Joey, you want to take a roll call?
Sure. Director Alvarez? Dr. Carey?
Aye.
Dr. Colson?
Aye.
Dr. Gorman? Dr. Groven?
Aye.
Dr. Jenkins?
Aye.
Dr. Katarg?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis? Dr. Mondero?
Yes.
Dr. Rotondo?
Yes.
Dr. Ross? Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Dr. Sager? Dr. Sonoyka?
Aye.
Dr. Walker?
Aye.
And Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
We have, I'm sorry.
And those are approved. Thank you very much. Item 4 is the public comments segment of our meeting. Any comments received now will be read into the record by the board secretary. There's no written comments, correct, Joey?
That's correct.
Okay. And is there anyone else here who wishes to speak this morning? Seeing none, we will we'll move on to item 5, which is Executive Director Leanne Redden. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just for the record, can we note that Director Jenkins has joined?
Yeah, please
the,
add
meeting
Director
as well.
Jenkins to the
Thank you.
role. Tasha, good morning.
I'll help out on some housekeeping as well. But good morning, Chairman, directors, and members of the audience and public who have joined us today. Just a brief update from me as we wrap up 2025. As you know, at our September meeting, we presented results from our summer 2025 customer panel survey results. And as a reminder, and those who are new on the board, this is a survey that's done on a quarterly basis, on a rolling quarterly basis with the same group of riders, and is a really important way for us to keep track of sort of changes over time across the transit system from customer perspectives and their attitudes about the transit system. And is very helpful to each of the service boards as they consider their future planning and services. But based on the feedback that we got at that meeting in September, we are now offering that survey both in English and Spanish. And additionally, we have gone back and are recruiting some additional Spanish-speaking participants who participated in the bigger survey that we do every couple of years to make sure that we are really rounding out that basis and making sure that we are hearing more voices in that conversation on an ongoing basis. So we do appreciate that feedback and that input and have put that into action already, and you will hear the report on that in the new year from those results. I also want to take a moment to thank Kevin Bueso, the RTA CFO and Deputy Executive Director of Finance, Innovation and Technology, for his years of service with us here at the RTA. I think most of the board know, but Kevin is moving on to become CFO at the Village of Oak Park. And we wish him well in his future work there and his ongoing commitment to public service. So I just want to thank him for that and his work here at the RTA.
He's sitting back there so quietly.
All right, moving on to the next slide, the legislative update. Earlier this month, I attended the American Public Transportation Association Winter Legislative Conference in DC, where our focus has remained on looking at federal reauthorization for the next federal surface transportation bill. I was there not just wearing my RTA hat, but as the chair of the National Association for this year. We continue to also talk about and push for continued investments for capital projects through the mass transit account of the Highway Trust Fund. I was also able, when I was there, to take the opportunity to sit down and meet with members of our congressional delegation, including Senator Duckworth, Representatives Krishnamurthy and Quigley, and also sit down with some senior staff from Senator Durbin's office as well, where we talked about these broader issues and more specifically some recent conversation around the importance of not just the commitment of federal money to capital investment in our public transportation system, but also maintaining the flexibility to be able to flex highway monies over to the transit side as a local decision might desire, which is something that had been leaked by Politico that the Department of Management and Budget, Office of Management and Budget, was considering prohibiting some of those actions on long-standing things that have been around since options that actually Republican administration included at that time, and has been very useful options for local public transportation agencies. So we talked about some of those focus areas. Also on Monday, December 8th, the Federal Transit Administration Administrator Mark Molinaro sent a letter to Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson issuing a special directive to the CTA requesting that the agency update its safety and security plans and make its operating environment safer for both riders and workers. The letter requested that CTA develop a security enhancement plan for FTA review and approval by December 15th and begin implementation on December 19 and update its agency safety plan by the end of this year. CTA has met that December 15 deadline and fully intends to be fully compliant with all of those requirements as requested by the FTA. And locally, already noted by Director Sonoyka, earlier this week, Governor Pritzker signed Senate Bill 2111 at a signing ceremony at Union Station, which I attended along with many other transit leaders in the region. As you know, this secures more than $1 billion in new operating funding for the transit system, starting next year when the law goes into effect. And it's not just about money, as you all are well versed. It is also a significant reform agenda, which reorganizes the region's transit system under the leadership of the Northern Illinois Transit Authority, or NITA, as it is known. That bill, as you also know, goes into effect June 1st next year, and we look forward to continuing the work to support that transition and setting NITA up for success. So next slide, just a quick look at today's agenda after an update from the the RTA Transit Citizens Advisory Board. We'll have a presentation on the semi-annual project management oversight report, or our PMO report. And then we'll ask for your vote on two amendments, one on the 25 through 29 capital program, another on the 25 operating budget, before presenting and asking for approval on the third quarter financials and some performance measure summary on that. And then finally, the adoption of the 26 operating budget, the 2-year financial plan, and the 5-year capital program. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will turn it back to you, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the Executive Director? If not, let's move on to item 6A, and that's the update on the activities of the RTA Transit Access Citizens Advisory Board. Ryan, thank you for being here, as always.
Good morning, Chairman Dillard, members of the Board of Directors. I'm Ryan Ruley and currently serve as Chair of the RTA Citizens Advisory Board. So I'll be providing an update pertaining to our last meeting held on October 27th. Since that meeting occurred prior to the end of the fall veto session, the majority of the discussion was focused on advocacy for legislation to address the fiscal cliff and the service cuts, fare increases, and layoffs that were being considered in the event new funding was not secured by the General Assembly. Of course, much of what was discussed at our meeting has already been resolved since Senate Bill 2111 passed just 4 days after we convened and was signed into law by the governor this past Tuesday. With that said, the board received a briefing on the 2026 regional budget process during the meeting, including a revised estimate for the 2026 budget gap, the structural fiscal cliff in 2027 and 2028, and actions that had previously been taken to solve immediate funding shortfalls. We also received an update on RTA's legislative activity for the past fall. It was reported that RTA's Transforming Transit Reform proposal was shared with legislative leaders and stakeholders, and the staff would continue to advocate for legislation to provide new funding with governance reform. Now that the funding for transit has been secured, I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude toward RTA staff and leadership for all of their hard work over the past couple of years. There was a lot of evaluation and education that took place to inform the process, and we've now come out ahead with the tools to deliver on a transformative growth scenario that we had all hoped for. Of course, many people from across a multitude of organizations help push things forward, and there's still a lot of work to do. But this is nonetheless a pivotal moment for transit in our region, and I would like to acknowledge RTA staff for their role in getting us here. Other issues discussed during the October meeting included an overview of the board's bylaws on membership terms for rider representatives. Since most rider representatives' initial terms will end this month but are subject to renewal, members were asked to let staff know if they were interested in continuing to serve on the RTA CAB for another 2-year term. Additionally, Lauren Gutierrez, representing the network advocating against domestic violence, reported that the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault RTA Public Transportation Assistance Program pilot has ended, and they are wrapping up issuance of remaining fare permits to survivors. Ms. Gutierrez reported that the network was working with legislators to make the pilot program a permanent RTA fare program. During the meeting, CAB members asked about changes to the fiscal cliff estimates. Concerns were also raised regarding the sales tax revenue being an unsustainable funding source, as well as the now avoided reduction in transit service and staffing. Lastly, 2026 quarterly meeting dates for the RTA CAB were approved. The next meeting of the RTA CAB is scheduled for January 26, 2026 from 10 a.m. until noon. And I will continue to make updates to the RTA Board of Directors on a quarterly basis and look forward to coming back here most likely in February with my next report. So I'd be happy to address any questions you may have. Thanks for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ryan. Any comments, questions? Great, thank you very much. Director Lewis has joined us. His train has arrived. Hopefully you're within the 95% on time of Metra. Anyway, let's move on to item 6B, the presentation of the semi-annual project management oversight report. AJ, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is AJ Nazem, and I'm the program manager for RTA's Project Management Oversight and Compliance Division. I'm here to present to you our semi-annual report on Project Management Oversight, or PMO for short. The RTA is required to oversee the service board's capital programs and expenditures. PMO is part of the RTA's fulfillment of this requirement. The focus of the PMO program is implementation, delivery, and completion of active projects. It includes oversight of all state-funded projects, regardless of budget, as well as projects with budgets of $10 million or more, regardless of funding source. The RTA and service boards have been working on improving the transparency of the capital program, and our PMO program works directly with the RTA capital team and service board project teams to ensure that capital funding is spent efficiently and effectively. We do this by having our PMO team oversee the progress of the projects firsthand by completing regular site visits and working with the service board's project teams. The PMO report was provided to you with the board materials, and it will be published on the RTA's website following this board meeting. Updated PMO project information is available on the RTA's Mapping and Statistics website, also referred to as RTAMS. The projects on the website can be searched using various criteria, including service board, geographical boundaries, or political jurisdictions. Oh, can I get the clicker? Apologies about that. Before going into the details of the report, I want to take a moment to provide some background on the PMO process. First, the service boards complete and submit their grant applications for the Rebuild Illinois and PAYGO funding. These are reviewed and approved by the RTA and IDOT. After the grant funds are awarded, the service boards finish up their project planning and complete their respective procurements. The procurements can include designers, engineers, general contractors, manufacturers, companies performing rehab, or even professional services such as construction management. Once service boards complete their procurement process, the RTA concurs on the procurements and a notice to proceed is issued to the contractor. The PMO process starts once there's an executed agreement with the contractor and project scope activities have begun. In essence, this is the point where the PMO considers the project to be active. Our PMO team monitors the scope, schedule, budget against the baseline approved in the executed contract documents. All active PMO projects are listed in the PMO report. Oversight continues until the project reaches substantial completion. To summarize, the RTA PMO projects are a subset of the capital program, and the PMO report provides a snapshot in time of the currently active PMO projects. So now that we covered the background, let's go ahead and jump into the report. The PMO report includes 86 active state-funded projects with a total budget of $11.2 billion, with over $3 billion coming directly from state funding. The report also includes 26 projects with budgets of $10 million or more, funded mostly with federal dollars and local funds. In total, the report details 112 projects, which shows a capital investment of over $15 billion into our region's transit system. This funding includes what has already been expended and what is obligated for these projects. Some of these projects span over multiple years. In terms of budget of the program, the bulk of the state funding comes from IDOT's Rebuild Illinois funds and PAYGO funds. All of the 2.6 million in Rebuild Illinois funding was awarded in 2020 and 2021 to CTA, Metra, and PACE. As of November, over 1.1 billion, or 44% of the Rebuild Illinois funding, has been expended. PAYGO funding has been issued annually based on the motor fuel tax receipts, with a total of $1.4 billion awarded to the service boards between 2020 and 2025. At this time, 880 million, or 63% of the awarded PAYGO funding, has been expended. Now, let's move on to the schedule. To increase transparency on the project timeline, the PMO report tracks two types of schedules. They are the preliminary schedule and the project implementation schedule. The preliminary schedule is submitted by the service boards with the grant application. The schedule covers everything from planning through closeout of the project. Looking at the pie chart on the left, we can see that 69% of projects are behind their preliminary schedule. This means project activities for planning, procurements, and implementation are taking longer than the service boards originally anticipated when they submitted the grant applications. The project implementation schedule starts once the contractor is issued a notice to proceed. This is the main schedule our team uses to track the projects all the way through substantial completion. The pie chart on the right shows that 38% of projects are behind their implementation schedule. This means that the contractors have encountered delays during the project. In summary, there are more project delays when we look at the preliminary schedule, and this is due to greater uncertainty with project activities with the grant application. Once the projects move into the project implementation phase, schedules are typically adhered to, and the RTA continues to encourage the service boards to have shovel-ready projects with more refined schedules when applying for grant funding. At this time, I would like to highlight some of the active state-funded projects. For CTA, construction activities are ongoing at the Racine Station and Morgan Substation project. This project includes reconstruction of the Racine Station House, traction power improvements with the new Morgan Substation, and equipment replacement at the Hermitage Substation. The rehabilitated Racine Station will be fully ADA accessible. The budget for this project is around $119 million, with $114 million coming from Rebuild Illinois funds. As for the project status, in October, CTA opened to the public the newly renovated east entrance of the station. The west entrance on Loomis is now closed for renovation with demolition and foundation work underway. Morgan Substation has exterior construction work and utility work progressing. And finally, Hermitage Substation has equipment testing underway. The planned completion for this project is August of 2026. For Metro, we wanted to highlight their zero-emission train sets project. It's part of their fleet modernization program. This project will introduce cleaner, modern equipment to the system. In terms of scope, it includes the purchase of 8 two-car battery-powered self-propelled train sets with options for up to 8 more. Metro may also order as many as 16 trailer cars with toilets and another 16 without. The onboard batteries will power both the movement of the train and all the onboard systems, including lighting, intercoms, and HVAC. These zero-emission train sets will operate on the Rock Island line. On this slide, you can see a rendering of what the new train sets will look like. In terms of project budget, we have a total project budget of $370 million, which does include all the options. In regards to status of the project, the intermediate design phase was recently completed and final design review is underway. Metra does have a change order in progress for higher capacity batteries, and these higher capacity batteries will extend the train set's operating range. Manufacturing has also begun on the first 2 train sets, and the first news is expected of October of next year, and final delivery is expected of August of 2028. The final project is Pace North Division Garage. Phase 1 for their garage electrification project. For the project scope, Pace renovated its North Division bus garage in Waukegan to support an all-electric bus fleet as part of its transition to zero-emission service. This facility will be the first in the region designed specifically for electric buses and will help advance Pace's broader clean energy goals. The scope included installations of numerous bus charging dispensers, including pantograph and pedestal models, bus charging units, additional outdoor fire hydrants, concrete pads with canopy structures for outdoor vehicle storage, upgraded electrical infrastructure to handle the higher electrical loads, and upgrades to the drainage structures. The budget for this project is shy of $17 million, all of which comes from state funds. The phase 1 was recently completed in November of this year, and in this picture, you can see the PACE team testing the pantograph charging of an electric bus. While we only cover phase 1 of this project, PACE is also making progress on phase 2, which will further expand the garage and upgrade the maintenance facility. The Rebuild Illinois and PAYGO grants provided a helpful infusion of funding into the capital program. Also, the recent passage of SB 2111 includes $180 million of new annual road fund interest allocation to transit capital needs, which is expected to be programmed later in 2026. However, it is not enough to address the long-term project backlog. The RTA strategic plan, Transit is the Answer, highlights the need for an annual investment of $4 billion over the next 20 years. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, AJ. Any questions, comments? And Joey, make sure Director Lewis is added to the roll, please. Thank you. Director Kotarek.
Thank you, Chairman. And first, I just wanted to say a couple notes about yesterday's bill signing. I don't forget, it was yesterday, day before. It's all blending together. But it was great to see Director Sonoyka, Director Colson, and Director Mondero, and yourself. And we don't have to say SB 211 anymore. Now we can say Public Law 104-457, the NETA Act. And really enjoyed Director Colson's LinkedIn post about it and your 20-year effort at reform and change, and wanted to recognize that and your astute observation that it's a rare day that you work 20 years on something where the end game gets you fired. So our gift for reform. And, you know, again, as we've talked about since the bill passed, our effort should really be focused on making sure NETA is successful. The Metro chairman at his board meeting said the same thing, and I think that's the right spirit. I think this is one of many of the elements, this PMO effort that we have, that is going to greatly expand. And so, AJ, just want to thank you for walking me through how we do things now. I think we can start getting ahead of preparing for those new responsibilities. NETA will be in charge of sometimes delivering capital projects amongst a whole host of other planning responsibilities. And so a couple of suggestions that we might take for you to think about. I think we should identify some of these capital projects that are ongoing as high priority or regional projects where we're going to have more responsibility, and getting some more regular cadence to the board about where we are with them. And also trying to think critically with the resources that you have at the PMO about where there might be some fault lines. I feel like our current status is we oversee, we get some project, you sort of get the minutes of meetings, but we're not thinking critically about what can change. So case in point, the Lake Street Station has gotten a lot of press. 3 years is a really long time for a project. I think that's just to a person. There's a whole host of engineering reasons. I think now with NETA coming on board, we don't have to take that as, it must be. What are some of the things that might have to happen to deliver that project quicker? I think that's a major project that we should be thinking about. I think another is Metra's bridge projects, which of course we've been talking a lot about, is a high priority project. We're going to be doing something first in the nation with procuring electric locomotives and electric train sets for Metro. We should be closely making sure that that's a success. Another one that comes to mind is the Obama Presidential Center Metro station, which itself is, has to be delivered on time and is really one of the biggest tourist draws and job centers that we'll have that's being built as we speak. And obviously all of the FTA attention on projects like the Red Line extension and the Red Purple modernization is another effort where our responsibility is going to increase. And the last note is thinking around the corner. What are the projects that are in the planning process now that are not necessarily our responsibility, but we will have a responsibility? And what are those that really have a regional impact, are large scale, so that we're not just waiting for the notice to proceed and here it is. How can we get ahead of it? And I think the spirit that we should bring is how can we deliver the projects faster and more efficiently? That should be the spirit that we're driving into this exercise. So just some food for thought on the PMO, and thank you.
Great. Director Mondero.
Thank you, Chairman. And to echo the comments of Director Kotarek, I'd be interested to hear, AJ, what do you think the NETA bill should have in terms of the PMO? Like how can we further strengthen the program? Like I think critics might say, oh, well, the service boards have their own PMO. And so how duplicative is this? So like one, there's a way that we can through NETA become more efficient, like, and have something centralized, but like, what frustrates you on a daily basis? Like going, these knuckleheads won't listen to me on XYZ. Like that's the type of stuff that is so important right now for us to like figure out the details so that it could be, if it's not already in NETA, that it can be put into the cleanup bill and legislation. So.
I will say we have, across Leanne's leadership, have been more collaborative than ever with all three service boards, so we haven't had too many touch points. But I do think there's opportunities, again, some of them are addressed in the NETA bill, which includes more joint procurements, as we see with PACE and CTA with electric buses. I think that's imperative, and we should keep on including more language to have piggyback language. Maybe if we don't have it for ourselves, we could piggyback with other service boards across the agency. I think there's also avenues to have additional services, maybe construction management, under our umbrella as well. That'd be another potential avenue. As of right now, I think those are the only two areas I could address.
And I think the bill lays out, it begins at the beginning, to not sound sort of trite, but, you know, by having the regional entity more engaged on project prioritization and selection on the front end, that sets the stage for before you even get to delivery of projects. And so being in on the ground floor, if you will, is really that foundational piece that the legislation changes to give that more centralized coordination and authority for those conversations going forward. So then there's a lot of specific key components that can be incorporated. But I think that that's really, I think, a fundamental change that really sets the stage for stronger front end coordination and leadership and direction, if you will, going forward. So I think that the bill does cover a lot of that. And then there will be lots of little nuanced pieces as we sit down and work through this transition period and work out what's more specific. And some of it'll be people and manpower to support some of these functions and activities as well. So it's kind of both large and small things that I think are important.
Director Lewis.
Thank you. AJ, thank you for your report. I'm going to choose my words carefully to make sure that I don't violate any mandates. Did this report historically have a participation rate included in it in terms of tracking how broadly we encouraged other outside firms to participate in some of the contracts that were being let, particularly with some of the subcontractors that were working for the generals? Was that a part of this report historically?
Are you talking about for project implementation on the service board side?
No, for project execution, when we tracked, the progress of projects and how broadly we brought in other participants to be a part of the project itself.
I think you're talking about DBE participation
Yes.
and minority firm participation. And so I think you track some of that. They follow both the federal and the state laws. And as you know, that there's a conversation happening now around at the federal level. So a lot of that is changing. And technically there are no DBE certified firms in the country right now. We are all going through the process of review and recertification, coordinated and led sort of in our region by IDOT, and we're all participating, us and the service board. So you track that, but we're not dictating that. That was compliant with other federal and state rules as they were going through those projects.
That's why I said I was being careful. So my question is, are we still sensitive to that issue as we look at some of the work that's being done just to encourage and make sure that that's not lost, even though we can't specifically comply with a particular number because of some of the federal mandates that have come out?
Correct. That is something we're interested in and also paying close attention to as well. We're seeing it on some of our projects where contracts do have to be amended because of that requirement. So we are encouraging the service boards the best they can, but as of right now, we're still waiting for FTA decision on that.
Great. Dr. Sauger.
Thanks, Chairman. AJ, thank you very much for being with us and thank you for the report. As we look at the performance schedule,
Okay.
You've identified that there is a rather significant, I would say, in both the preliminary schedule as well as the implementation schedule of being behind schedule. Can you identify, you indicated a while ago that part of that was for grants being kind of behind schedule. What are the other three top things that are really the just foundational cause of that condition?
Sure.
And how then I think do you see that we can relate those to exactly what Director Tark is saying in terms of being able to position ourselves so as we get into the NETA effort, we can move things forward in a more efficient manner?
I think the biggest risk that we have right now to schedules is, the first one is unforeseen conditions, especially when you're doing construction projects, especially in some of these older facilities, you know, these old buildings, you don't know if the pipe and wire is actually 3/4 inch conduit. It might be 1/2 inch. It might be some, you know, old wrapped in cloth kind of wires. So unforeseen conditions do always pose a giant risk to it. There might be a duct bank underneath that you're not aware of. That does pose a schedule risk. So when we say a project is behind schedule, there may be delays, but I think we need to separate between excusable delays and contractor-induced delays. So a significant amount of the delays are unforeseen conditions. The contractor had no way of finding them. Another issue that we're finding inside these contracts or inside these projects is, you know, long lead time items, especially when it comes to switchgear with electrical components. I don't want to get to the data center talks, but a lot of times these big data centers or big conglomerates, they'll pay extra to have their switchgear come to the front of the line. So when we have our fixed price, we're not able to pay that extra $500,000 million to jump the queue. So that increased the cost as well associated with it. And then I think if I were to pick three, I'd have to look at the numbers again, but I think permit delays is also the biggest major one, which again, when we have all these different agencies in Chicago, we have the OUC. There's 33 separate utility companies and organizations, including Department of Water Management, Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. All of them have to review these projects. If there's the slightest error in a design, they have to restart the project all over again. So I think in terms of addressing that one, it may be better if we have, again, a person who could potentially expedite some of these permit reviews as well. But that'd be a broader talk for a region as a whole.
Is there any challenge with production of components out in the general economy?
Yes, so long lead time items still pose a major risk. Anytime there's an escalator, an elevator, even from my time in the private sector, I've never seen a project related to an escalator, elevator come in on schedule. Just being blunt, same with long lead time items, included just regular electrical gear, certain lightings, composite materials for platforms. A lot of them are having a lot of issues associated with it in terms of manufacturing and production of it.
All right, so I thank you very much for your forthrightness in terms of identifying those areas that create our condition of being behind schedule. What are some things that you would suggest, just a couple on the top of your head, that would help the NETA board as they move forward to begin to reduce this condition and create a greater degree of efficiency and on time?
I think, again, the biggest thing we could do right now is probably have a regional permit expediter approach. Permitting seems to be the major delay for the majority of our projects. I think if we could do that, that'd be a big help. And in terms of rolling stock, you know, some of the issues we have here are, you know, we're doing one-offs and for a specific reason. But if we can get more to a universal model that's already approved, we can reduce some of the testing time for that as well. And that'll dramatically reduce the schedule.
Great. Thank you so much, AJ. Appreciate it.
And I can just suggest too that perhaps as we're looking at identifying all the myriad of transition components of things that we as staff working with others in the region are talking about to set up NETA for success, we can incorporate that kind of thing into that list of, you know, either things to do now or things to be followed up on in the future.
Good. Think that's very important. Thanks, Chairman.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Director Carey.
I just want to quickly emphasize two things that have been said. Director Katarik and what Leanne said about, I agree with everything Tom said, as far as changing and getting ready to change the processes and start to use some of our authority, even though we don't have it till next September 1. To that end, what Leanne focused on, which has been a frustrating thing over the years that I've been on the board, is we found out about projects when they're down the road and we can't affect a lot, you know, a big part of it at all, sometimes not at all. So I would not like to see us wait till September 1st to start to expect the service bureaus to include us from the very beginning in terms of talking about and prioritizing projects. So that's one thing. And the second thing, I was going to ask the same question Dr. Sager asked about 38%. And I don't remember because I know it's always higher, the behind schedule is always much higher in the preliminary than in the project implementation, but 38 sounded high to me, but I don't remember what it was last time. So if you could, when you present this, if you could break down the general categories as you just went through with Dr. Sagar as to why it's behind schedule. And that'll help us as we start to look at, as Dr. Sagar said, how can we change that? Thanks. Thanks, AJ.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? It's been, it's amazing and it's anecdotal, but over the last week, the State and Lake construction project that's going to take place, I have had more people come up to me and ask why it's 3 years. And I have, including the fact that there are hotels adjacent to it. They can't do work at night. There's a lot of reasons. But the public is focused on a lot of this, including now the time that it takes to do this construction. And I've been amazed since the time I've arrived here, and I've been around public life for a long time, is the construction expense on transit projects, but it is what it is. The construction costs have gone up everywhere. You are right, elevators and escalators. And it's a manufacturing supply issue, but it's also just a workforce issue. Is who's there that is qualified, to work on escalators or in many cases, elevators, hotels. Leanne probably stays at more hotels than I do, but I've stayed at a lot of hotels over the last year, and there is not a hotel. And these are sophisticated. I mean, these are major corporations. Everybody's got an elevator that's down at everywhere I go. And I think part of it is just, who are the workforce that's able to install and repair this equipment. So, it's a new world out there, but to the service boards, if they're listening, as Director Carey said, we want to be involved now. We don't want to wait till September 1st or whoever the NETA board is, September 1st, to do this. So thank you, AJ. Appreciate it.
Thank you and happy holidays, everyone.
Likewise, thank you. Okay, 7A is the amendment of the 2025 to 2029 capital program. Tara O'Malley is here and will be presenting. Good morning, Tara.
Good morning. I am, there we go. Here I am. I'm Tara O'Malley, Principal Analyst in our Capital Program Department. I'm here to present our closing amendment to the 2025 to 2029 capital program. This amendment includes changes to the approved funding and projects for CTA, Metra, PACE, and the City of Chicago Department of Transportation, also known as CDOT. The overall program is increasing by $39.35 million from a mix of new funds and reprogram funds from past capital programs. One of the new funding sources to note is the state's IDOT local project funding grant totaling $26 million for CTA, Metra, and CDOT. CTA's program is increasing by $8.41 million from all new funds. CTA's additions this quarter are from the state, which include an Illinois EPA grant that RTA applied for on CTA's behalf, and an IDOT local project funding grant. Metra's program is increasing by $20.76 million from a mix of new and reprogram funds. Metra's new funding is from the Federal Department of Transportation, the Federal Department of Homeland Security, and the same IDOT local project funding grant that CTA received. PACE's program is increasing by $180,000 from an Invest in Cook grant. And finally, CDOT received $10 million from the local project funding grant mentioned before. As we have seen in the past, CDOT is responsible for the construction or renovation of some CTA stations, such as the case for the State and Lake Station. Typically, non-service board projects aren't included in the RTA program. However, these funds from the state are from the state and they pass through the RTA to CDOT per legislation. Therefore, the RTA is to grant the funds to CDOT. Since we are granting the funds to CDOT, we need to make them a part of the capital program. Details of all of these changes can be found in your memo in Schedules 2A and 2B of your board packet. As this is our closing amendment for the year, we wanted to highlight how the 2025 to 2029 capital program has changed throughout the year via 4 program amendments, including today's. Last December, the board adopted the 2025 to 2029 capital program with $8.48 billion in available funding. Throughout the year, the program increased by a total of $321 million via 2 sources: new funds, which adds $158 million to the program, and reprogram funds, which adds $164 million to the program. The final program up for adoption today is $8.8 billion. The FTA didn't make as many federal discretionary grants available to be awarded this year compared to last, so the amount of new funds isn't as high for our region as we saw last year. Let's review the new versus reprogram fund changes service board by service board. CTA's 2025 to 2029 capital program started out the year with $5.9 billion in available funds. They added a total of $129 million to the program, which includes $36 million in new funds and $93 million in reprogram funds. New funding for CTA primarily comes from competitive grants from the state. Next is Metra's 2025 to 2029 capital program. Metra began the year with $2.1 billion in available funding. Metra added a total of $148 million to their program, which includes $77 million in new funds and $71 million in reprogram funds. Metra's new funding comes from a combination of federal, state, and local funds. PACE's 2025 to 2029 program began with $379 million of available funds. They added $34 million throughout the year, which is all new competitive funds from state and local sources. Finally, included in today's amendment, we're adding in CDOT's award of $10 million from the competitive grant from the state. We'd like to congratulate the service boards and ourselves for these efforts of applying for and receiving competitive funding. And we encourage everyone to continue to apply for discretionary grants as they help to advance the capital program. Now let's turn our focus to the competitive funds the service boards received. We'll start with the federal competitive funding. Metra is the only service board that added federal competitive funds in this year's program. Metra was able to add approximately $71 million from a combination of grants, which are $48 million from Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity Funds, or RAISE, for the Van Buren Street Station and Rogers Park Station projects. They also received $22 million from the Federal Railroad Association for rail crossing elimination funds for their Smart Gates project. They also received $690,000 from the Department of Homeland Security for police security drones, and $570,000 from the EPA for clean heavy diesel vehicles, which are funding their battery, electric, and hybrid vehicles. Now let's look at the state and local competitive funding added to this year's program. All 3 service boards and CDOT added competitive state funding, while Metra and PACE added competitive local funding. The state funding, RTA and PACE received, RTA on CTA's behalf, is a total of $61 million in Illinois EPA funds for electric buses, electric non-revenue vehicles, and electric charging equipment. CTA, Metra, and CDOT received $26 million in an IDOT local project funding grant for Phase 2 of Red Purple Modernization, also known as RPM for CTA, Harvey Transportation Center for Metra, and the State and Lake Project the chairman just mentioned earlier. And CTA received $740,000 in a state technical service planning grant for their bus priority corridor project. Finally, there are two local funding sources that Metra and PACE received. They both received an Invest in Cook grant. Metra received their grant for their Hollywood/Zoo station improvements, and PACE received their grant for the Cermak and 22nd Street Business Access and Transit Pilot. Finally, Metra received $210,000 from McHenry County for their Woodstock Yard. To conclude, staff requests adoption of the following ordinance: approval of the amendment to the 2025 to 2029 capital program. We're happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we're seeking your approval for this ordinance.
Thanks, Tara. Any questions or comments on this item? Yes, Director, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman. Can you expand a little bit on the grant received by the Department of Homeland Security?
Sure, there's a transit security project grant. It's escaping my head right now. But the Department of Homeland Security makes funds available for various security projects. And so Metra applied for and received about $640,000, is that what I said? In funds for their police drone purchase. So in the past, CTA has received these funds for various things associated with police vehicles. It's all for enhanced security on the system.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure that even when we're applying for specific grants that, and I get it that if it's for security reasons, that it's not to terrorize communities or what have you, right? Especially with
Understandable.
everything going on right now.
Understandable.
So I just want to make sure that even, I mean, many times, even if we receive a grant, I'm not sure, I mean, of course, we can see the dollar sign and it might look good, but it might be something that our communities are not really welcoming.
Very fair.
Yeah.
Very fair.
May I ask another question?
Yeah, please, Director.
So I noticed that most of the dollars that are received are from public grants, like from the state or federal. Is there like a culture to also seek dollars from private institutions or any kind of private kind of, and why is that not a culture of it?
I don't have an answer to that. I've been here for a little while and haven't seen private grants come through. I'm not entirely certain on what we're beholden to by introducing private funds. I really don't know the answer to that.
It's an excellent point, Director, and we had a witness here a couple of weeks ago who, it was a smaller topic, but who said, why don't we skin our trains and do more advertising, which is, you know, it's a small percentage of what you could have, but that's a great question and one we ought to think about. If we have a billion-dollar benefactor who wants to do something and want an infrastructure project, we ought to be able to go get them.
Yeah, I mean,
I bet you New York does it.
exactly. Like I'm even thinking of like the Clark and Lake
Um,
station. Google owns that building now, or you know, all of these different opportunities. So that's kind of where my mind was going. But thank you, Chairman.
The Alvarez station, the State and Lake Alvarez station. Malik.
I was going to add that there is partnerships. It's not traditionally like a grant where you get money just to build a project or something. There is partnerships that the three operators utilize to generate private investment or monies into the system, advertising. I want to highlight an area that there is potential significant growth is in the joint development area, which is something that we have already embarked on doing some work around. And then with the signing of the legislation and the creation of NEDA gives more authority for the region to actually advance that. So there could be, there's the opportunity for, well, there is potential more opportunity in that space. It probably wouldn't be a traditional, here's a grant and we're writing you a check. It would be more like a partnership opportunity. But Malik, did you have other things you want to add?
Yeah. So we do not have sort of a foundation, sort of a legal status to be able to accept funds. But in the past, as Leanne said, we have seen either P3s or if the city of Chicago was able to get a benefactor and would then decide that some of the funding could go to a transit project, So we have tried to pursue those things, but I don't think any of that would show up on the specific capital program, because that is strictly about how we receive public funding to fund infrastructure projects.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
To
Director
Director
Bandero.
Alvarez, when I was at CTA, I know that former Chief of Staff Teresa Mintel was actually a big proponent of creating a nonprofit foundation to like get money for CTA. So that might be something that, again, we can talk about, you know, should there be something for NETA as an offshoot to do exactly that?
Absolutely. Dr. Sagar?
Thanks, Chairman. I want to apologize to everybody because I'm going to say some things that I shouldn't be saying right now, but I feel compelled to do that. So my apologies to one and all. I'm reminded of the fact that, you know, McHenry County continues to support a Woodstock yard. Director Katarik, you were talking about people's concerns about a station's delay of 3 years. We've been looking for this yard for 20 years now and working hard to get it in, and maybe, just maybe, we might get it, but it's not even included in this capital fund period. It's not there. We want it there. It's not there. Nonetheless, we just find it hard in Woodstock to even get a warming shelter. We need a warming shelter. We don't have one. So there's a lot of money out there. There are collar counties that need some funding and some support as well. So I would just encourage us to think about maybe showing people in the collar counties that there's an interest in getting some projects completed in our regional area as well. So that's just a push, and I apologize to everybody because I really shouldn't be bringing that up at this time, but it sounds like a little a whining effort, or a little bit like a
Director, I have an update
cat that
for
needs to go outside or something like that. I don't know.
Director, I have an update for you on the warming shelter. As you obviously know, over the years, as you've advocated, the freight negotiations with Metra have dragged on forever to get that project completed. They have basically either signed or agreed to sign an easement, and we expect construction in Q1. So that took a really long time to get there.
You've just given me a Christmas present, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Yes, and we just will make sure to hold everyone accountable to this delayed schedule. But I think the big change we expect with NETA is that a lot of these conversations are, as you know, happening at a 30,000 foot level instead of our ability to involve ourselves in some of these negotiations. And we would like to be there so we can push your priorities in a more direct manner than having to wait for service boards to individually negotiate and provide updates every 3 to 6 months. We would love to be able to do more than that, and then the legislation will pave the path to be able to do that.
You're a true politician, Mark. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
NETA will have more teeth, and the Dr. Brian Sager warming station will come, as long as it doesn't need an elevator or an escalator, because that could delay you 5 more years.
It doesn't need that. You know? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Director Alvarez.
Yeah, no, and I just want to like make sure that I don't lose like part of the point of the going back to the Department of Homeland Security, that I am all about like let's attract new dollars, but then also like if there was a way to add parameters on when do we say no also, right? Especially for the new NETA board. And I'm just saying it in that, you know, we have to be careful in that at certain points by accepting dollars from specific agencies or what have you, that it makes us compliant to whatever the mission it is that they're trying to carry. So I just want to make sure that I say that because as we're thinking about the new NETA board and what have you, like I'm trying to think of like ways that is creative in terms of attracting new dollars, but also what parameters do we need to put in place? At what point do we say no? So I just want to make sure that I say that.
Thank you. And I had a long conversation with Senator Villanueva at the bill signing ceremony the other day, you know, about ICE, about Pilsen. And so your point's very, very well taken.
And just a little bit of history of the grant, and we will talk later today, but a lot of this was related to a pot of money for transit and transportation facilities after 9/11 to make sure there's access to cameras and vehicles, and we don't have sort of terrorist attacks, things like that happening on our system. So this is a very dedicated piece of grant that has existed for a couple of decades. We are definitely making sure that it doesn't intersect in any negative way with the current environment that we are facing with some of the same departments.
Just saying Brown University should apply for some of those camera grants in light of what's going on there now. Any other comments here, or how about a motion and a second to approve Tara's recommendation? Director Sanak, thank you. You're officially now making your first motion, and Director Walker seconds. Joey, take a roll call.
Dr. Alvarez, Dr. Carey,
Aye.
Dr. Colson,
Aye.
Dr. Gorman, Dr. Groven,
Aye.
Dr. Jenkins, Dr. Katarik.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
Yes.
Dr. Mondero,
Yes.
Dr. Rotondo,
Yes.
Dr. Ross, Dr. Ryan,
Yes.
Dr. Sagar, Dr. Stenoika,
So, yeah, aye.
Dr. Walker,
Aye.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
We have 13 ayes.
Thank you, and that is approved. Thanks, Tara, very much, and Malik. 7B is an ordinance authorizing the amendment of the 2025 ADA paratransit budget and the 2025 regional operating budget. Doug Anderson, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Doug Anderson, Manager of Budgets and Analysis here at the RTA. This item asks you to consider adoption of an ordinance which approves a revised 2025 ADA paratransit operating budget, along with minor changes to the PACE suburban service budget. This action follows the amendment of ADA paratransit funding for 2025 approved by the board back in August, which determined a funding solution for the budget overrun which has developed. This action item does not impact the ADA action plan and associated monthly cap of 30 rides on the rideshare access program that began in October. As we've discussed before, the Rideshare Access Program, or RAP, was launched in March of 2024. Along with the Taxi Access Program, or TAP, these subsidized programs offer ADA paratransit certified riders more flexibility. The program proved to be very popular and effective at increasing the mobility of our disabled community. But the resulting surge in ridership soon led to projected budget overruns for 2024, 2025, and 2026. Combined RAP and TAP ridership, shown by the orange line, surpassed traditional ADA ridership during the first quarter of 2025 and has approached 300,000 rides per month. Traditional ADA ridership, shown in black, has remained relatively steady at around 225,000 rides per month. On the right, we show that annual TAP RAP ridership in the proposed budget for 2025 is now projected to exceed the original budget by more than 2 million rides. Contrary to expectations, the increase in RAP and TAP ridership has had little diversionary effect on the more expensive traditional ADA service. Before discussing the proposed budget in detail, here are the previous actions taken to date. In May, the board approved using $25.5 million from the ADA Paratransit Reserve to remedy a year-end 2024 budget shortfall, leaving just $8.3 million in the reserve. In June, the RTA adopted an action plan to slow cost growth and manage ridership. The action plan included a cap of 30 rides per month and a fare increase. PACE implemented the action plan on October 1st. In August, the board acted on the recommendations of the Ad Hoc Committee on Transit Funding and approved a shared sacrifice funding amendment, which required that PACE submit a revised ADA paratransit budget for consideration. The PACE board adopted a revised budget on September 17th, and PACE submitted the revised budget to the RTA on September 22nd. Here are the details of the proposed budget amendment. Due to the increased RAP ridership and associated subsidy payments, operating expenses are projected to be $49 million higher than the original 2025 budget. This takes into account the impact of the RTA action plan in the fourth quarter. On the positive side, the additional ridership does produce additional fare revenue, providing an almost $4 million offset of the higher expenses. That's the second row of the table. Thus, the resulting increase in the funding requirement is $45 million. These figures are all consistent with projections made by PACE and the RTA last summer. The lower section of the table details the funding changes already approved by the board in August from the ADA Reserve, Innovation Coordination and Enhancement Funding, and Incremental Sales Tax 1. Note that $2.8 million of the funding shortfall was left for PACE to solve, and their board approved a one-time use of Suburban Community Mobility Funding, or SCMF, to round out the revised 2025 funding requirement of $311.3 million. One final note on the numbers in the proposed budget. You may have noticed some changes to the PACE Suburban Service expense and funding levels in the ordinance schedules. These account for the reallocation of that SCMF funding to ADA, and also a relatively minor change to the ADA support credit. The ADA support credit accounts for the cost of work performed by other PACE departments in support of ADA paratransit. By including those changes, the ordinance amends both the ADA paratransit and suburban service budgets. For next steps, we do have the delayed third quarter certifications as the next agenda item. We produced the comparisons and recommendations for that item using this revised ADA paratransit budget, which in effect assumed board approval of this amendment. As a rule, we do not presume board approval or disapproval of any agenda item. But in this case, we were required to do that just because of the timing of these two items. In a couple of months, we'll have the fourth quarter certifications and a better idea of the year-end funding situation for ADA paratransit. This proposed budget, if approved, is still very much a projection. There will be an actual year-end ADA funding shortfall or surplus relative to this new budget. We expect that variance to be relatively small. Any surplus will be retained in the RTA's ADA paratransit reserve, but the solution for any additional shortfall will need to be discussed with the PACE staff. That concludes my presentation. Back to you, Mr. Chairman, for any questions the board may have before voting on the budget amendment.
Thank you, Doug. Any questions? Director Groban.
Thanks, Doug. We had in our kind of prep session, there was reference to some data available for maybe 1 month of the results of the RTA action plan to give us an idea if it's moving in the right direction.
I think we're going to discuss that potentially next month. I've seen the data. That is having an impact, and PK is here to discuss.
We have received 1 month of data from PACE. We want to pause a little bit to understand kind of better the relationship between obviously a quick decline in RAP and TAP rides with the 30 ride cap in place, and some growth in the traditional ADA, because it's kind of two levers here that go in opposite directions. October is also kind of a weird month. It's usually the highest ridership month across all modes. So there's a big seasonality component to it. The data is not yet audited. It's not final. That's why we're not bringing any information at this point, really wanting to understand it better. But we did see, immediate impacts of a drop in the subsidy program. So the lines reverse. The gold line goes below the black where it was previously in 2024. But we are seeing an increase in traditional ADA as a result as well.
All right, thanks.
I'm sorry, and what was the name of the last speaker?
My name? Oh,
Yeah.
Peter Kirsten, the division manager with regional planning. Apologize.
So,
Go ahead.
sure. Follow up, I know that you're going to give some more information next month, but for the October data, what percentage of RAP and TAP riders hit the 30 number? Is it, I think that previously we saw it was around 5%. Is it still around that, or?
Of the people that use the RAP and TAP program, so there's kind of two different ways to look at that percentage. The 5% would represent the whole universe of ADA eligible riders, and it would be below that. It would be below 5. If you look at people that are using the RAP and TAP program, The number of people that hit the cap was about 19%, which is actually quite a bit lower than we estimated. So that's another piece to this, is that we can see in the data that there's some behavior change, that people saw this program was changing and started using it differently. And that's good. That can be good, because that was part of what we were trying to adjust for. But again, it's very early to kind of understand seasonality component. November's had a lot of bad weather. It's been a cold winter to start. There's a lot of kind of noise in the data before we want to draw any strong conclusions as to what the impacts are.
Director Alvarez.
So I see that there's ICE funding. Can you expand on that?
Different item.
It's innovation, coordination, and enhancement.
I kind of figured. Do you mind like next time just spelling that out? Thank you.
And we have been better about doing it. The state named a program back in 2008 before it had some of the connotations it does now. And just in the table format, we tend to still write ICE, but we have been more vigilant on ensuring that we spell out the name of the program.
It's a bummer of a name. I usually joke about it. Director Carey.
I appreciate the little preview of the data, but I look forward to, in the beginning of 2026, having a couple months of data as we kind of move forward on discussing what we do with RAP and TAP. And in particular, we have talked about in the past, we're not taking action today beyond the amendment, the budget amendment. However, I do look forward to having a continuing discussion of 2.0, as we've referred to it, is what do we do next? Two particular things. How do we make this program work financially for the entity, but also work for the disabled community? And that probably will require being able to allow more than 30 rides per month. So I look forward to, and we've talked about this in the past too, some sort of appeal process, raising the cap for an appeal process based on need and their prior use. I mean, have they used, traditional paratransit in the past? And that to me demonstrates a real need. So that's one thing. And then I also, part of this absolutely has to be a close look at traditional paratransit. We hear from PACE's surveys that overall it gets pretty good marks, but then we hear from the disability community that it doesn't work. So, and I realize, this is here and there, but we need to take a closer look at, why is that not working? Why are people not using that more? So I do look forward to that in the first quarter of 26.
Yeah, and I'm asked for all kinds of data on, are they really tardy? Like we've heard the witnesses say, and what's reality with respect to the traditional service? Director Sonika, do you have a question or anything?
Just listening intently, I know from suburban Cook County, the RAP and TAP programs are very paramount to us because it effectively helped plug gaps between the townships and other traditional ADA paratransit programs. So echoing what other directors have said so far, looking forward to making this a priority as soon as we can in 2026. So looking forward to the reporting as well. Thank you.
Any other questions? You ready for a motion? So Director Carey moves that the item 7B, seconded by Director Sonoyka, that we approve the ordinance authorizing the amendment of the 2025 ADA paratransit budget and the 2025 operational regional budget. And with that, Joey, you want to take a roll call?
Dr. Alvarez?
Aye.
Dr. Carey?
Aye.
Dr. Colson?
Aye.
Dr. Gorman? Dr. Groven?
Aye.
Dr. Jenkins?
Aye.
Dr. Katarik?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Yes.
Dr. Mondero?
Yes.
Dr. Rotondo?
Yes.
Dr. Ross? Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Dr. Sager? Dr. Sonoyka?
Aye.
Dr. Walker?
Aye.
And Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
14 ayes.
And that so passes. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Doug, very much. 7C are the resolutions certifying financial results for the third quarter of 2025 and the quarterly performance measures and Malik and Sarah Rubino. Good morning.
Good morning again. Members of the board, I'm Malik Vaishnav, Senior Deputy Executive Director of Planning and Capital Programming, and I'm joined by Sarah Rubino from Finance. So as we have done in some past quarters, where I'm here to present an update on the omnibus performance measures as required by the Act, we are not going to seek your vote on a certification for that portion just yet because it was a 2-year 2023 Act. We want to see all 12 months of 2025 performance data reported from CTA Metro and PACE and come back to you in Q1. And then all of that work transitions to the NEDA bill down the road. So we'll have to figure that out as well. But then Sarah will present to you the financial portion that we are seeking your vote on. So there will be we will seek your vote at the end for the financial portion. Our third quarter financial and performance report was completed recently and includes comparison to our operators' year-to-date performance to peer agencies. And here there's an example on the left of a bar graph showing ridership recovery as compared to 2019 for our operators compared to the peers. So for each of our fixed route modes, the gold bars in this chart show year-to-date 2025 ridership as a percentage of 2019. Along with each mode's peer average across the country shown in black bars. So as you can see, our ridership recovery has lagged peers throughout this year, but we are all headed in the same direction together and are continuing to grow our ridership in the region. Actually, October was the highest peak since the pandemic began, so in our region. So we are on the right track, but we are still a few percentage points behind where our peer agencies are. So overall, the regional ridership is 3.2% higher compared to this time last year. Metra and CTA Rail have led the gains with increases of 6.5 and 4.6% respectively in this quarter or this year, while CTA bus ridership was up 2.2% and PACE bus has seen a little bit of a reduction compared to last year at 2.7%. Overall, the system has seen a net gain of 5.6 million rides compared to 2024 and is obviously on track to surpass last year. I'm also, again, here to present an update on the omnibus performance measures, which we have presented to you quarterly throughout the year. To give some background, the legislation in 2023 enacted required that RTA service boards publish monthly operational performance measures and the RTA board annually certify them in substantial accordance with the Act. The failure to certify this data would lead to withholding of state reimbursement of free and reduced rides, which is about 17 to 20 million a year. Last year, you voted to certify, and we anticipate to be able to do so in Q1 for the second year. There are 3 areas for publishing monthly performance measures by CTA Metro and PACE. The first is staffing that you see up here, positions that are budgeted, filled, new hires, attrition, staff in training, absenteeism rates. The second is service, how much of service is being scheduled and delivered, how many revenue miles are being run, how much access passenger wait time are they experiencing at bus stop and train stations. And the third is security, crime statistics and code of conduct violations, effectiveness of security and safety investments. So I'll give you a quick update on where each agency is at right now. Here's the CTA's very expensive performance dashboard that is on their website. It has 22 pages that you can dive deep into route stop level data of how their service is going. And they are very consistent at updating it. It's currently updated through October. They have also added additional links to the same web page that hosts this page that includes customer satisfaction survey results, their transit asset management plans, ridership reports, and rider suspension memos with quarterly updates. So the summary page showed here in October 2025 as compared to 24 shows a few areas in green where things, I know it's a very tiny font on the screen, but where performance continues to improve compared to last year. So the big area is the headcount. CTA operations are now staffed above 2019 levels for both bus and rail operators. That is a huge success. The deep cleans are up significantly, and the amount of service being delivered on the ground continues to grow compared to previous year. The unfavorable results in red include absenteeism rates have ticked up, and the rail headways continue to have some issues, so spacing between trains on some lines. Metra's website includes the performance measures page that includes monthly tables providing stats on service, security, and staffing. There were several other performance measures that Metra reports that continue to be reported on a separate webpage. The results are available on service from March 2023 to October 2025. On Metra, we largely see their ability to put out almost as many trains as they schedule. And you can toggle to see on-time performance or delays or other things. It's an interactive web page as well. There are also sections for safety and security for Metra. Within safety, Metra includes the number of reportable safety incidents, police officer train rides, station checks, grade crossing enforcement details, and the staffing includes the number of employees that are required to operate service and the number they have on hand, and it's generally been higher than what they require. So they're definitely meeting the requirements of this legislation. PACE has a landing page. Here's an example of a piece of that page that includes both spreadsheet. You can download and play with the data if you're a data nerd like some of us. But here's a quick look at the security section. They are listing their code of conduct violations. They are fully, their fleet is fully camera has access to cameras on every bus. And alarms for operators. They're also reporting expenditures for private security at transit centers. And the staffing section also includes the number of budgeted and filled operator positions, employees hired, lost to attrition, in training and absenteeism rates. So all of this information is then available on our website to link people to these web pages. So here's a quick summary of where we are. There are some checkboxes on the left that show in green where progress has been made this year. So last year, there was some feedback from the board of what progress we can make to report additional information. We have done so. One metric of interest, I'm sure will come up today too, is the effectiveness of safety and security investments. How do we measure those? So while the agencies continue to find ways to do that, RTA, we decided to go ahead and include some questions you see on the right to our riders directly. Do you see changes since last year in some of these investments? Do you know about them? How familiar are you? Generally, more than half of our riders are on the positive side of provide positive feedback. Either they have heard about different things that CTA, Metra, and PACE are doing, or they've seen a change that they feel safer than they used to, but there's still work to be done. A majority of the people are saying that they just feel the same they used to last year. So we need to make a dent there, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in more detail in the future. But one specific thing I wanted to highlight is that one big request was, especially on the city side and CTA side, to be able to have more crime analysis of CTA's specific service posted publicly. Chicago Police Department has this webpage available now that you can go and check crime stats by different types of crime and also compare it to different timeframes. So here you can see overall that since last year or the past 2 years, the overall incidents, FBI reportable crimes have gone down on the CTA. But then when you dive into some specific areas, there are some areas where things are, there are more incidents compared to last year, and there are some other areas where incidents have declined. So this gives us a little bit of a better view of what types of incidents CT and CPD may focus on in improving the perception and some of the stats here. And in some areas, they are doing really well. As you dive into the dashboard, you can go into the detail of different parts of the city or stations or bus stops where some of these crimes are reported. So this is definitely a step in the right direction. So the next steps from our side is that we will continue to work with CTA, Metra, and PACE to make sure that all 12 months of data are reported for 2025 and then seek your certification so we can report to the state that we are complying with this in a substantial way. We are already reviewing the new legislation because a lot of these requirements continue with NEDA, and in some ways could be argued that it should be a centralized reporting at the regional level and don't need 4 different dashboards that 4 agencies reporting this. So we'll definitely work in that direction. And also our 4th quarter customer panel survey is out there, and we have added ability for people to respond in Spanish and take the survey in Spanish if they would like to. So we'll get more information in Q4 if people report additional suggestions or changes to this item. So I'll pause here for a second to take any questions before turning over to Sarah to walk you through the financial results.
Director Walker.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Malik. I know you are delivering the stats, but just curious if you had any information on why we might be lagging behind our peers in recovery.
Yes, in ridership, we have seen several trends. One is that we saw our service exceed peer levels just halfway into 2025. So some of it in the early part of 25, our service was still lagging in terms of delivery, and now we have exceeded our peers. So we should start seeing some gains and catching up to that. We anecdotally have seen some impacts of sort of the federal enforcement activity on bus stop and train stations in specific areas. We still have a bunch of improvements in off-peak in service that, for example, Metra is planning that's waiting on freight approval and negotiations. So we, as a region, are trying to align our service better where we can get more riders, which is different than pre-pandemic. It's definitely taking longer. The larger view is also that our ridership is tied to how the rest of the region and the city is recovering from the pandemic economically. So if overall the downtown office occupancy is less, Metra directly sees an impact right away.
I see.
So compared to some of our peers, the larger ecosystem is also lagging a little bit.
Okay. And so I just also wanted to comment, it is great to see some of these additional line items in this report, like specifically the CPD crime rate. I mean, they're not great stats, but it's good to be able to see some of these, specifically the absenteeism, things of that nature. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Lewis.
Malik, thank you. I just had a question for comparative purposes. I know we've talked a lot about safety and security, particularly as it relates to a lot of the transit agencies, including the CTA. This new CPD public safety dashboard, do we compare, I know we have 1,580 total incidents. Do we compare that to the number of riders in our system versus other systems so we can have a relative idea about how safe our system is compared to others, say like New York has X number of riders and X number of incidents? Do we have that kind of information available?
That's a great question. So some of these are required by the FTA to be reported up across the country. So some types of incidents are reported, and then we can compare ourselves based on our level of ridership. It's always good to index to something, so we're not just comparing oranges to apples. But the issue is that this specific CPD dashboard does go into detail on some types of crimes that occur that we may not be able to connect the dots with other agencies. They may not be reporting them. They may not be reporting up to the FTA. But on our website, for where we can compare, we are normalizing it by ridership and comparing it to our peers. I would say we are in the middle of the pack. There are definitely some agencies that are seeing lesser crime rates, especially right now. DC and New York are 2 great examples of reporting and seeing changes of their safety investments at a greater level than we are. But we are sort of on par with systems like Philadelphia, for example, where I think we are comparatively there. So I would say we're in the middle of the pack as a region.
Okay. As we make progress against that goal, I think it would be something good to really kind of highlight, because the sense sometimes people have is different than the reality, and they may or may not look at these components, but the aggregate sense would be helpful in terms of informing the public.
Absolutely.
No doubt. Director Mondero.
Thank you. Hey, Malik, question. Do you know how the service boards track when the POS system Ventra goes down? And I asked this, just prior to our meeting, Director Groven was commenting that Ventra wasn't working and his conductor mentioned that that's a regular thing, right? And I get on a bus sometimes and, you know, the POS system's not working and then bus driver will just wave everyone on. How do we track that? Because that might like account for a big percentage of that lag of ridership versus us and our
Right.
peers.
So the general process is that I would say in the last couple of months, there have been some scheduled upgrades being done, and it was all figured out that that sometimes for a few hours the Ventra system was down. So that was not because something was messed up by the vendor. It was planned. But in either case, when either on Metra or CT or Pace, either specific machines go down, there's a process through their incident reporting and management system where it's notified for immediate work order that the vendor has to go out and fix it within a certain period of time. But the people on the ground, whether it's a bus operator, train conductor, they're supposed to manually report the number of free rides that they may have provided. So that gets reported as part of this number. I think the other portion is fare evasion that is a little bit different, that could be contributing a few percentage points. But in terms of what you described, it should be incorporated in our ridership data.
Director Curie.
Malik, when I look at the three different examples of CTA, Metra, and Pace, how they report the performance metrics, CTA is the most attractive to me and the most detailed, and it gives the actual information as well as, you know, is it improved or not since last time? What is, you know, as we look forward to NETA and to trying to operate as a more unified transit system, is there thought on how to coordinate this? I mean, can the other two service bureaus use the same software that CTA is using?
It's a great question. So initially, our working group so far is focused on building the capacity to actually make sure that the data exists internally to be able to report out. So we very much focused on it could look attractive, it could look ugly, but we need the information out there. That's the primary focus. Metra has made some progress in using the same Power BI software as CTA in at least listing their service data, but they haven't been able to meet the other two at that level. And Pace is just reporting everything in like a tabular format. My goal very much is that there should be a centralized place for all of the region to report information in one place. People should not have to track down multiple dashboards. They should not look different. It should be streamlined. So now as we transition, our focus will be to come up with a process, because we won't have access to some of this information to be able to have it on the RTA website quickly, but how to make sure that all three agencies are reporting through a system so that the rider sees a very clear single regional dashboard to go to for everybody across the region.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pat. Director Kuterik.
Thanks, Chairman, and thanks, Malik. I just want to make a couple comments on the safety issue because I think it's paramount. Now that we have the funding issue resolved, and even argue that safety is even more important than the funding in the immediate sense. And so I don't think we can do too much on that. And we're in the middle of a lot of discussion with the feds and everything else. And I want to recognize that there's been an enormous amount of work by CTA and their leadership to address this issue, but also recognize that, you know, it's not at the results we want to see, that there is a whole lot more that we can do. And for NETA, as we've discussed, you know, what is for now and what is for NETA? The authorization for us to take over, really, in many ways, and be a central hub of how safety and security is implemented is coming. And I think when it comes to safety, there's not too much that we can do now, that we should be doing as much as we possibly can. And I think as we are addressing these issues, we really have to convene, collaborate, and intervene when necessary to make sure that this is addressed with as many of the resources we have to address the problem. That we can't leave service boards to handle this by themselves. It's not just the Metro Police Force. It's not just CTA. The new legislation and law puts Cook County in the driver's seat initially at a table with a bunch of other different police forces. We don't necessarily have the voice of labor. We don't track that, and the worker assaults and that there's data on that. And we should look at that. And how do we look at that relative to our peers? That's an essential part of this. This is one where I think, the service boards might be able to go fast if they go it alone, but we really need to do this together so that we can go further. And as we talk about this, I'm looking forward to hearing more about how CTA has been addressing it, but want to put the marker out there that this is something that we have to do together, that it's going to be more people at the table, and there's more responsibility that's becoming a regional responsibility, as it should. This is an issue that isn't just confined to one geography. It is a system and a network that is regional, and we need to address it as such. And now we have the resources to do it. And this exercise at its core is really trying to measure what is successful. I think we got better in this, but we're still not there. If we have contracted security that we're putting on the system, we have to know if it's working or not. If we have a drone contract that we just approved today, is that an effective way to monitor security? We really have to look at how much we're spending so that we're better informed of what we spend in the future and how much, because I do think that's probably going to be one of the first and early requests for that unallocated funding that we're holding back. And so let's have that conversation as soon as possible with as big of a table, with as many voices and experts to address it as possible.
And I echo that. In fact, I was on a call this morning at 6 a.m. with labor on the issue of safety. And I know that Sheriff Dart has already sat down with some of labor, including making sure, and I know the unions are taking what they think are their finest, most veteran operators, and they're going to be part of the task force discussion. But I know Sheriff Dart's already focused on this, even though the bill doesn't go into effect until June 1st, and they're all over this. And I agree with Director Kotarek. Safety is our paramount concern right now. Now that our bill is passed, it's all about safety. And it's been in the news just because of a couple of really nasty incidents. They're all nasty, but really nasty. It's out there, and we're working on it. And we're going to put you to work on some of this stuff too. So thank you. Who else has questions or comments here for Malik? Going to pass it over to Sarah.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman and Directors. I'm Sarah Rubino, Principal Analyst in the Finance Department, and today I'll be asking the Board to certify the Service Board's financial results through the third quarter of 2025 against the adopted operating budgets, including the amended ADA paratransit budget that was just approved. So let's look at our primary metric for evaluating substantial accordance. It's the operating deficit performance. CTA, Metra, Pace Suburban Service each reported favorable to budget operating deficits ranging from about 7% to 11% due to lower than budgeted operating expense performance. Now that we're comparing to the amended ADA paratransit budget, their operating deficit result through the third quarter was 2.5% favorable. The system-wide operating deficit of the service boards, including ADA, was about $2.2 billion. This regional result is $181.5 million, or 7.8% favorable to budget. Accordingly, staff recommends a finding of insubstantial accordance with budget through the third quarter of 2025 for the results of the CTA, Metra, Pace Suburban Service, ADA Paratransit, and the region as a whole due to the favorable operating deficit performance. As a region through September, we've now used about $2.9 billion, or almost 82% of the total COVID relief funding and related reserves allocated to the system. For the year to date, the service boards have used $446.1 million of these reserves, which is $241 million less than was budgeted. This is due to the strong sales tax receipts and the favorable operating results we showed on the previous slide. And that concludes my brief report. Back to you, Mr. Chairman, for any questions and a vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of Sarah? If not, how about a motion and a second to approve her recommendations on the report? Director Groven moves, seconded by Director Lewis. And with that, Madam Secretary, would you like to take the roll?
Dr. Alvarez, Dr. Carey,
Aye.
Dr. Colson,
Yes.
Dr. Gorman, Dr. Groven,
Aye.
Dr. Jenkins,
Aye.
Dr. Katar,
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
Yes.
Dr. Madero,
Yes.
Dr. Tondo,
Yes.
Dr. Ross, Dr. Ryan,
Yes.
Dr. Sagar, Dr. Sonoyka,
Aye.
Dr. Walker,
Aye.
and Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
14 ayes, it passes.
Thank you. And 7C's approved. Thank you, Sarah. 7D is an ordinance adopting the 2026 budgets, 2027 and 28 financial plans, and the 26 through 2030 capital programs of the service boards and the authority, that's us, and appropriating funds for the 2026 budgets. And again, Kevin, as you step forward, thank you so much for your service. You were an amazingly quick study. When you got here, you were following sort of a legend before you. And I've already talked to my friends in Oak Park and told them you're a wizard and they got a good one coming. So we wish you the best and we thank you very much. And as you're out there in, as the CFO of a major village, a quintessential large Chicago village, if you see something you think we ought to know about, say something. Let's put it that way. Brian, thank you for stepping up again. So gentlemen, it's all yours.
Thank you. Chairman Diller, and thank you to the board as well for the support over the last 3 years as I served as a CFO for the RTA. Tons of great experience, and again, thank you for all that as we navigated an interesting environment. And I'm happy to see the news and what came out and what was signed yesterday. And now I know who to call if I have some ideas.
You're going to a village that mass transit is really, all three forms of mass transit service boards come into your
Definitely.
village. So it's good.
Yes, I might be able to get rid of my car if there. So, and again, thank you to Leanne and Jill, department heads, my team as well. They've been very supportive and have been very supportive throughout my tenure here. So, with that, I will just go over the 2026 budget as well as the 27-28 plan. My colleague here, Brian Lowenberg, is going to go over the capital. As you recall from the last presentation, except for the new board member here, we did have the more detailed presentation on each one of the service boards budgets and our own budget. So this presentation today is more of a roll-up of that, and we are asking the board to adopt the regional budget with the understanding that we're going to have probably an amendment within the first 2 quarters of 2026 or sometime in 2026. As required by the RTA Act, Leanne, Maulik, and I presented the proposed budget and capital program through the 6 counties, county boards during November and December. We ended that with Kane and Will County last week. And thank you so much to the many board members that made the trip and presented with us during those county board presentations. On December 4th, RTA Chairman Diller presided over the required RTA budget public hearing via Zoom. Members of the public provided testimony ranging from fare enforcement to bus shelter maintenance. In addition, 14 public comments have been received via email or comment card. Many of the written comments express a lot of enthusiasm and excitement about the future improvements to the transit system with the passage of the NETA Act or law. The Amalgamated Transit Union expressed opposition to RAP and TAP program, as we may have heard before. We would like to thank all the members of the public who provided these comments in the year's budget, and as we did the hearing as well. Trying to get used to doing the flipping of the slide myself, so. The proposed 2026 regional operating budget totals $4.4 billion. These represent an expense growth of close to 5% as compared to the 2025 budget. And it's a 7.2% increase over what we're estimating that 2025 expenses are going to be. This is primarily driven by increased service levels as well as associated labor cost that comes along with that. CTA expenses of $2.2 billion comprise just over half of the regional operating budget, followed by Metra at $1.2 billion, or 27%. PACE expenses are $372 million, are 8.6% of the total budget. PACE ADA, paratransit, at $361 million, and that's 8.3%. The RTA agency's own budget is $49 million, or that's 1.1% of the total budget. These expense shares are very similar to what we have seen in the past. The only exception is ADA, which has increased, and we talked about that amendment. And so with that, that's 6.8% of the original 2025 budget. As we heard from the service board leadership last month, adapting to the shifting travel patterns of their riders and customer safety and security are some of the primary recommendations of the 2026 budget. As directed by the NETA law, no fare increases are included in the proposed budget. Each agency is adding service, and the proposed budgets are balanced using the remaining relief funding that we have, as well as the projected NETA funding anticipated to start to flow in the latter part of 2026. PACE's proposed ADA paratransit budget is balanced by $24.4 million of system-generated revenue in 2026. This is resulting in a funding requirement of $336.8 million, expected to be satisfied with sales tax 2, PTF 2, state ADA funding, and as well as funding from the NETA law. The ADA paratransit budget continues to include the taxi access and rideshare access program. TAP and RAP fares in 2026 remain at $3.25, which were implemented by the 2025 RTA action plan. This is equal to the traditional ADA paratransit fare.
I just want to point out too, there's over $100 million of efficiencies from the service board on here, which I think is important to note.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that is highlighted here, and we have detailed information on each one of the operating budget documents that we have. So that's a good item to point out. As I presented last month, the proposed RTA agency budget is $48.8 million. The recommended budget funds the essential responsibilities of the agency, also supports enhancements in some areas, but then also sets the stage for the transition to NETA. The agency budget does comprise administrative expenses and the provision of important regional services for residents and riders, such as ADA paratransit certification, the reduced fare program, and the transit benefit program. Balanced with projected revenues, proposed expenses are supported by $40.4 million of RTA sales tax. Again, that's a zero growth from the 2025 budget, as it was originally committed to. Keep in mind that the proposed RTA agency budget does not take into account all the other requirements that are included in the NETA law. So that's not included in this budget, and that may result in, or will result in, an amendment for 2026 as we get going. Sorry, it's like one of the most significant reforms of the new NETA law is the lowering of the recovery ratio from 50% to 25% for mainline services and from 10% to 5% for ADA. The budgeted recovery ratio must also be reported to the state once the budget is adopted. Just want to clarify here that while the penalty for not meeting the requirement is waived for 2026, it does remain in place for future years. Given this temporary restriction on fare increases and removal of most previous recovery ratio credits or adjustments that we were making by the new NETA law, The current operating budget structure is unable to meet the new 25% requirement in the 2027-2028 plan years. To address this year, just to meet that requirement, we did have to use $200 million in what we're calling revenue credits to meet this recovery ratio on paper, since that's a requirement for the budget to be adopted. If we remove that credit, the budgeted recovery ratio in 2027 and 2028 is about 20%, which is again shown on this slide here in red. We are thinking that a legislative remedy may be required, needed to address this problem in 2027 and forward. So just one of the items that, again, will need to be addressed. With that, again, in August, RTA funding amounts ordinance 2025-39 declare an innovation coordination and enhancement funding emergency for fiscal year 2026. If you recall, that allocated all $17.4 million of this kind of funding to CTA for operating budget support to delay anticipated service cuts as long as possible. CTA, Metra, and PACE have all proposed using this funding in future years. Staff here has reviewed that information as proposed and are recommending approving that. At this time, this covers the operating budget, and we'll turn it over to Brian Lowenberg to cover the capital side of things.
Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. I'm Brian Lowenberg, Manager of Capital Programs, and I'll provide a brief overview of the capital program that's up for adoption and discuss some key projects that are funded. The 2026 to 2030 capital program contains $9.3 billion in funding for CTA, Metra, and PACE projects. 57% of that comes from federal sources, which include both formula and discretionary funds. 17% comes from CTA bonds, 15% comes from state funds that include PAYGO from the motor fuel tax, and 10% comes from the City of Chicago TIF district. 1% comes from Service Board and RTA sources. Next slide, please. Sorry. The funding split by Service Board is $6.76 billion for CTA, or 37% of the program, including almost $4 billion for the Red Line extension, $2.12 billion for Metra, or 23% of the program, including $400 million for new rail cars, $367 million for PACE, or 4% of the program, including $142 million for electric buses. 19 million, or 0.2%, is being held by RTA based on performance-based programming metrics in the 2030 year, and that will be distributed at a later date. RTA evaluates all of the capital projects included in the proposed program based on 12 regionally important themes that were included in Transit is the Answer, the region's strategic plan, and are listed here on the slide. These themes include improving access to key destinations, accessibility, equity, and the impact on safety and security, just to name a few. Each theme is evaluated using either one or two metrics, totaling 15 criteria. All of the project evaluations are available for review in the budget book appendix, as well as in RTAMs. On the slide, you will see a sample page of the evaluations that appear in the budget book. Projects are sorted by priority project with the total need and funded amounts shown. This year, we are also looking at key goals met by each project. These goals are state of good repair, transition to zero emissions, all stations accessibility, and expansions and upgrades. Each project is assigned one or two goals. For example, a project such as purchase electric buses would have the goal of transition to zero emissions and state of good repair selected. You can see that expansions and upgrades, as well as state of good repair, make up some of the largest investments. Let's take a look at a few key projects by goal. First, let's look at some of the key expansion and upgrade projects in the program. $4.08 billion of programmed projects are expansions and upgrades. For CTA, the main projects include the Red Line extension, funded with $3.8 billion, and the bus turnaround upgrade project, funded with $57 million. For Metra, projects include the 78th Street entrance at the new Auburn Park Station, funded with $35 million, and the Harvey Transportation Center, funded with $19 million. For PACE, projects include River Division expansion and electrification, funded with $36 million, and the Paul Cermak 22nd Street line, funded with $33 million. Another regional emphasis with significant funding in the program is the continued effort to make all stations accessible. CTA's All Stations Accessibility Program focuses on making stations fully vertically accessible. Funding includes improvements for Oak Park and Ridgeland on the Green Line, Cicero and Austin on the Blue Line, and Clybourne on the Red Line. $245 million is included in the program. Metro's accessibility enhancements include improvements at many stations with a combined investment of $214 million. The region continues to move forward on the project to transition to zero emissions. In the current program, there are several major investments. CTA has programmed $362 million for the purchase of articulated electric buses and the necessary charging equipment, as well as $133 million to electrify 103rd Street Garage. Metro is funding new technologies, including zero-emission train sets at $184 million, as well as battery-powered locomotives with $29 million. The first test zero-emission train set is due to be delivered in 2026. PACE is providing electrification of their services. There's a planned investment of $70 million for garage electrifications. In addition, PACE has programmed $142 million to purchase electric buses. Finally, maintaining what we have is of paramount importance. Collectively, the service boards are spending nearly $3.5 billion in state of good repair projects, with a big focus on maintaining and replacing revenue vehicles. CTA is making a big investment in vehicle programming, including $227 million to maintain the existing fleet and $408 million to purchase new rail cars. In addition, as mentioned, $362 million has been programmed to articulated electric buses. Metra is funding their new bi-level rail cars with $491 million, which are expected to begin delivery in late 2026 or 2027 for testing, and the bridge program, which aims to replace at least 5 bridges a year with $64 million. PACE is maintaining a state of good repair by spending $206 million on new buses and $35 million on paratransit vehicles. In conclusion, staff recommends board adoption of the proposed 2026 operating budgets, 2027 and 2028 financial plans, and the 2026 through 2030 capital program as outlined by Kevin and I in the presentation. The budget proposals and capital programs that are detailed in the ordinance are balanced, based on reasonable assumptions, and meet all other RTA Act criteria for adoption. This concludes our presentation. Kevin and I would be happy to address any comments prior to the vote. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions, comments, Director Lewis?
I just have a quick question. This may be also for Leanne because of her work at the national organization. We're investing heavily in electrification, which has taken a lot of our budget dollars. Is that consistent with other agencies across the country? Because I know the administration is talking about, going back to fossil fuels, and we're heavily investing in electrification. So just trying to get some sense on the relativity of that and whether we're leading, following, keeping up, or what the answer might be.
So I think we're kind of middle of the pack. It's a tough job for everybody due to the availability of buses, some of the electrical work that AJ has mentioned. So I think the process continues, as CTA mentioned at the last board meeting, and PACE didn't have a chance to note. Both received a Lono Award for hybrid buses, so kind of the middle technology, which will help during the transition period. So I think we're kind of moving forward on both routes, keeping state of good repair as we transition as well.
I guess my thought was, I know state of good repair has been something that's been a priority, and they talked a lot about the availability of buses in terms of, committing to this, but not being able to get the actual equipment because it's not available. So that was why I was looking at how much effort and dollars are being put into the budget versus the availability of product or capability to deliver, what's required.
And I think what you'll see is most of the funding for the electrification is in the further out years. The amount in 2026 is on the lower end, as they think more will be available later on.
Yeah, I mean, I
Excellent
think
question.
what Brian said covered it. There's sort of that middle ground space where there is funding for hybrid buses, hybrid vehicles to sort of meet that demand, especially when you've got a bus that's exceeded its useful life and needs to be retired. They've got to replace it with something. They can't wait 10 years for, a surplus of electric vehicles, for example, to be on the market. So there's sort of that middle ground and that transition phase, and it is going to be a long-term phase. I think we talk about it a lot, but like as Brian said, it's actually for out years in the program, largely.
And the legislature has their own thought process. It's funny, I see a gentleman who's testified here before out in the audience. He'll be all over you after your question, Director Lewis, who has some thoughts on things other than just pure electrification. He can run through a million numbers with you.
Just another small point is, I mean, there's federal funding that has in previous administrations, and the last transportation bill funded a focus on transition to electric vehicles. And we also have state requirements, the state law on which we're operating under to meet that mandate as well. So we're, got to balance out all those interests and those requirements as we're trying to deliver and support the funding for the service boards on their capital programs.
Director Colson.
Yeah, let me fulfill my annual role as not only senior member of this board, but as its resident curmudgeon and rain on your parade a little bit, if I might. To me, the operating budgets are pretty solid, and the thing the system does the best is the operators of the trains and the buses and the service boards do a tremendous job moving millions of people every day, mostly safely, mostly on time. But to me, the stumbling block is a structural one, and it deals with the capital budgets. And it's all about the service board silos, in my opinion, and the same silos that the legislature and the governor have condemned in the new NETA Act. And, with these silos actually come tumbling down now under NETA, and I don't know, none of us really know. There's already been some serious pushback, I know. So let me give you 3 examples, and then I'll shut up. The 2008 Transit Reform Bill, which is all but forgotten now, required a universal fare card. And 17 years later, we're still waiting for it to happen, and I notice it's not in this budget. Metro won't do it, and there's just no way to force them to do it. And my wife was in the legislature at the time, was one of the sponsors of this bill. So I still hear about the failure 17 years later to have a universal fare card. Budgeting for capital projects. I just have 2 examples. The new State Lake platform has been talked about, $444 million over 3 years. It's mostly city and some federal money, I guess. But there's been no regional priority analysis by us or anybody else how important this is. I mean, there's a station 2 blocks away, the Clark Lake. By comparison to 444 million, the Quincy station was redone in 2016 for 18 million, which adjusted for inflation, I come out to 24 million. And that's 5% of what this 444 million is now. Metro's rebuild of the 95th Chicago State Station, much needed, is 56 million. That's 12.5% of what the CTA wants to spend on this State Lake platform. And I don't know if anybody's considered alternatives. We need some more the P&O oversight, PMO. You could just extend the platform to Clark and Lake. You could maybe shut down the loop for 6 months and build the station more quickly, which is what they did on the Red Line a few years ago, and it got it done quickly, and it was less painful than waiting 3 years. The point is, I don't think that we even were consulted, at least I wasn't, not even aware of this project until years later we read about it. And I think Director Carey, you mentioned that. We should get involved in these capital projects much sooner. And then lastly, the elephant in the room is the much criticized Red Line 5-mile extension. The cost went from $3.5 billion to $5.5 billion in a matter of months last year. And I think we all assume it's going to end up go even higher. It's no local official can dare criticize this project because it's already started. And I fear we're falling into the classic sunk cost fallacy trap, where we can't stop it because we've gone too far. And I think that would be a mistake. And I guess this is going to be Anita's lab, not ours. But to issue $2 billion in bonds, pledging fair revenues for the bonds without any principal payment until 2041, which is what the CTA is proposing, seems to be saying we really can't afford this. And there's no question to me that this red line project as presently financed will compromise the availability of state of good repair capital need funding, which has already been identified as not enough. So I fear that this borrowing will be an albatross around the neck of NETA for decades, at least till 2041. Again, maybe the solution is earlier involvement by us, and some of you on the board, I think, are probably going to be on the NETA board. And I wish you'd take that into account. So NETA has to exercise some fiscal restraint. There has to be an external check on some of these projects. Now, as to the vote on the budget, I realize the budget's going to pass. But there's a need, in my mind, to somebody to be a vox clamantis in deserto, for those of you who know Latin, a voice crying in the wilderness. Some dissonant voice must be heard, and it usually falls to me every year. The only real say I have under existing RTA Act is to record a dissent to budgets that include such overcostly projects. And so that's my thinking right now, and I could be talked out of it, but I doubt it. Thank you.
It's good thinking, and we appreciate it very much. Anybody want to follow that? Yeah, Director Kotarek.
Thank you, Director Colson. And I think a lot of the fresh blood on this board too has been candid about this. I think, part of the NETA authorization and what we'll have to do in the future is with transparency and being honest. How do we learn from this is the real question. If things are expensive, the cost of capital projects that Chairman Dillard brought up in transit, how do we lead the nation in delivering projects faster and at less cost? That's got to be the principle of everything we do. We've learned that lesson, what it looks like when that isn't possible. And so your comments resonate with me, and I think there's things we can do in the future too. So Kevin, first I want to mention, one, congratulations on the new gig. And I think you're going to start getting a check from NETA when you get over there. The NETA law makes us pay for security and safety in Oak Park and River Forest and a few other communities. I think that's our responsibility. And so we'll, as we get those receipts, we'll be following your great work of looking closely to make sure that they're fully accounted for. But congratulations. I think on the recovery ratio, echoing Director Colson's comments, let's not give our hands up just yet. I think you'd alluded to maybe a legislative fix in 27, way too early, way too early. If it's 25% we have to meet, I think what we need to do right now is have the service boards come back to us, each with plans on what their interpretation is of getting to that 25% by 2027. I think, again, setting up NETA for success, we need to start taking that law seriously and seeing what we need to do right now in our budgeting process to make us hit 25%. It is a clean recovery ratio. We backed out all of the stuff that's in there. We call them credits, a little bit of eye of the beholder of what counts in there. Now it's clean. How much does it cost to run it? How much are we bringing in? So what's it going to take? Let's have that honest conversation and setting that new tone. Also on the efficiencies, we are going to have a historic investment for transit. It's what we're really excited about. We also need to have a tone of cost control and prudence in what we're spending. And I think those efficiencies are key. I'd really encourage us to make public the delineation of what each of those efficiencies are. So it's not just cost from real estate. What real estate? What are we saving? And encouraging even more. I think building back that trust in the fiscal stability of this system is really important. Last sort of piece is just on the capital question, is if someone can answer, maybe Brian, about the upcoming Metra loan and whether or not that will have to insert itself into the capital plan or this budget. I know that we've talked a lot about the bridge program. I think this is one where we can really set up NETA for success as potentially the first thing we do is really getting into jumpstarting that program. So what's the latest on that bridge program we've been talking about?
I mean, I think the conversations that we have had with Metra is that they are intending to proceed with the initial due diligence and the financial analysis, et cetera, to set up for a future loan agreement. They're not at a loan agreement yet. Metro hasn't confirmed a timeline, but we've also continued to express that perspective with him, and to a point that I think has been made, that this could be, do the due diligence now, set the work up, and line it for, a future program or future loan agreement under the new legislation.
Or Kevin, on the recovery ratio that Tom was talking about, you're really flagging that it's ADA paratransit. That's the big pusher there.
No, so on the operator side, on the operation side, for the service boards, as it is right now, because of the fare increase not taking place, we're not able to get to that 25%. I think on the ADA side, we're both situations, as Director Katarak mentioned, is going to have to be discussed in 2026 as the preparation for 2027 budget season starts. That's definitely one item that, the new board will have to decide on how to address it. One of the items is this way. The other one is obviously how Director Katarak proposed or mentioned. So, but it is on the operating side. So.
And on the bridge program, I've had multiple discussions with the chairman of Metro, Mr. McMahon, brilliant guy, and, a very strong chairman, and he's all over it. So, feel free to speak to him as well, because not only is Jim on it and the staff at Metro, but the chairman's really engaged in it, and it's a critical program. It's a safety program. Director Alvarez.
Thank you, Chairman. So I guess like one of the questions that I have and I'm trying to figure out is if there's any kind of like matching dollars or anything like that. And I'm specifically thinking because of, as we're thinking about electrifying so much of the fleet, right? Of course, many of these power companies stand to benefit, right, in the future. So I'm trying to think of like any kind of partnerships that have been created, specifically with any power companies in terms of building grids or anything like that. And I'm just trying to figure out if that is something as part of the equation as we're thinking about electrifying. Maybe not. I don't know. These are just questions.
The grid, what we're talking about is actually the purchase of rolling stock and then the upgrade of their facility, the infrastructure to upgrade their facilities, less about sort of the establishment of grid. I think they're bigger conversations that sort of cities, region, and the region are having. Our focus has been on the funding and the purchase of like the vehicles, for example, and the supply chain associated with that primarily. One thing to just remind the board of is with the establishment of NEDA and the new law, there is it's very clear that beginning June 1st, electrification is the law of the land, if you will. So that's something that we have to, work to comply with going forward.
Dr. Stiver.
Thank you, Chairman. A lot to kind of comment on, but I want to try to keep this in a logical flow or pattern. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have for State of Good Repair is the bridge program. And I don't think that we fully embrace that yet, but I think it's a major, major, major concern. And the cost of that program is going to be quite large and very impactful to the totality of the budget. And Metro has a responsibility to lead that program. And I think they're doing a good job, but it's going to be an ongoing need. And I think we're going to find that the costs of the estimate right now are going to be significantly higher than what we have. I appreciate my colleague, Mr. Colson, Director Colson, because he has stated repeatedly over the years that we need to be, I think, practical and realistic, and I don't think we have been. And I respect him and I appreciate him, and I'm going to vote in favor of this item that's going to come up before us, and I expect Bill to vote probably no, but at the same time, I'm going to vote yes on this. But I think his points are very, very well placed. One of the fallacies of human beings is the fact that we learn lessons, quote unquote, but we forget those lessons very, very quickly. And every economic down cycle that we have, we pledge to do a better job, and we don't quite get there. And I apologize because I'm going to get into a lecture mode here as a professor of economics. I would always tell my students that there is an ideal that we always look for as we think about development, and that's an upward line, in terms of time and our developmental goals. And so it's an upward line, but we have these annual cycles that we go through, and those cycles are like a spiral, if you will, around that line. So you can think of it as kind of a spiral spring, if you will. But that spiral spring, we hope, is going to be cone-like, because we think about this developmental line as being a line of perfection. And we hope that we get closer and closer to that line of perfection. So you think about a cycle economically that goes around that line, and you hope that that tightens and gets closer and closer to that line of perfection. And the reason we do that is because we hope to learn, right? As we go through every cycle, we hope to learn something about what we've done. I think that in this particular instance, we're looking at a glitch in that cycle, if you will. And the reason that I believe we're looking at a glitch in that cycle is because one of the things that we have to acknowledge, yes, the state of Illinois was very, very lacking in their funding of transit. They funded transit at too small a level, and that was never going to work. And so they had to increase it. So we want to point the finger and say that the state needed to increase their commitment to transit financially. And they've done that now, right? That's what we fought for. We've done that. And so now we're all like, it's great, we're done. We've got the money and we're done. But that's going to force us now to forget some of the lessons learned. And one of the lessons that we had to learn the hard way was that we in one service, and I'm not going to talk about it too much, but one service agency overbonded, overextended, and had a significant debt that truly placed a burden on the system. And so now we say we have money, so what do? We go ahead and say the red line, we're going to bond higher for that red line extension, right? And we're going to just sign off on that, and we're going to say that's great. We're getting back into a challenge of bonding, right? We're borrowing money. We're bonding at such a significant level that it's going to take buku years, that's one of my scientific terms, buku years to pay that back. And so what's that going to do? That's going to force upon us additional challenges. And so that spring towards perfection, if you will, is going to have a big bulge in it, in my mind. And we're not moving back towards that line of perfection because we haven't learned our lesson well, or we've forgotten the lesson of the ultimate cost of bonding to us. And so we're going to have to look at that financial stability in the future. And I fear that we're going to go back to the legislature and say, we're going to have another crisis. And I think we have to be mindful of that from the very onset. And let's rejoice, but let's not celebrate the drunkenness, if you will. And let's keep a tight control, a cost control. The sum cost fallacy that Director Bill Colson said was the fact that, we're too far into it that we can't stop it. But boy, we're gonna have to do something to control these costs in the future. And the costs aren't gonna go down. I mean, we have this whole electrification goal, that's wonderful, but look what that costs. And these bridges are essential. I'm just very worried about that. So I apologize. I get on my high horse sometimes, and I want to vote no with Director Colson, my friend and colleague, but I won't vote no. I'll vote yes, but his points are well placed.
Right, and so are yours, Dr. Sagar. One of the things that I think, or lessons we should learn and or the new board should learn, is we need to stay engaged with the legislature. And now we have really educated legislators on the issue of transit. Evedina Delgado, Senator Villavam, Representative Cam Buckner. And we need to stay engaged with those people. We need to stay engaged with the mayor and the governor. Red line extension. I mean, that is a decision that has massive political implications. And it was a political decision made by the leaders of the city of Chicago and other places. I was at the ceremony when Senator Durbin led us off, saying this has been promised through multiple mayors to a South Chicago community underserved, in fact, not served at all. And that's a political decision that was made by elected officials, including multiple mayors. But we need to stay engaged more because some of these ramifications are decisions that are made way above us by your appointing authorities. And we need to stay engaged there, including more with probably more with the governor in the future, or future governors, future mayors, whoever is left around here. Electrification. I mean, there's a new issue that's here, and I wouldn't say we're stuck with it. We're discussing it still today. But again, that is a decision coming from the state legislature that we're going to just do electrification. I know Melinda Metzger was down there with Pace all the time, as well as Dorval Carter and Nora, talking about electrification. But, there's a lesson there. Some of you go, well, why do we have lobbyists and other things? We need to stay more engaged with our elected officials so that they don't go off and make decisions without understanding the ramifications. And they may still order us to do things, but those are political decisions. And the red line, to me, is a 50-year, promise that's been made by multiple elected officials. And basically, we're being told it's going to happen, and we're going to do it. So we just need to stay. The lesson is we need to stay engaged with the legislature, and now they are highly educated, thanks to Representative Delgado, Cam Buckner, and Senator Villavam. So we need to stay more engaged with our elected officials so that we're not just so they know what the actual costs are of some of these things that they wish to do. So thank you. Both of you guys are, right on. Director Alvarez.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. And I think that I would just want to really highlight that when things like these come our way, it is an opportunity for private-public partnerships. So that's why that's something that I am always going to be in the lookout for. Like what, not just is it a burden, but then what is the opportunity that we're seeing and that we're actively seeking as these new things come our way. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I think even in budgets, I always do like to see if there's any kind of private-public partnership going on.
Me too. Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all. So let's have a motion and a second on 7D, which is the meat of today's meeting. How about our new director? You want to make that motion?
Yes, I would
As
love to.
as a mayor too, and an advocate. Thank you. How about a second? Seconded by Director Alvarez. With that, if there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary, please take the roll.
Dr. Alvarez?
Aye.
Dr. Carey?
Aye.
Dr. Colson?
I vote no.
Dr. Gorman? Dr. Groven?
Aye.
Dr. Jenkins?
Aye.
Dr. Katarg?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Dr. Mondero?
Yes.
Dr. Rotondo?
Yes.
Dr. Ross? Dr. Ryan,
Yes.
Dr. Sagar,
Yes.
Director Sonoyka,
Aye.
Dr. Walker,
Aye.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes,
We have 13 ayes and 1 no, 2
Okay.
absent.
thank you very much with a few asterisks. It's approved. Thank you very much. 7E is a resolution amending our RTA board schedule to add a meeting on June 1st. That's the day the new law goes into effect. And we have an important duty under that law. So we need to add a June 1st meeting, the day it actually goes into effect. Any questions? Director Walker moves then, seconded by Director Mondero, that we add the June 1st as a meeting date. Any questions, discussions on that? If not, Joey, take a roll call.
Dr. Alvarez, Dr. Carey, Dr. Colson,
Aye.
Dr. Gorman, Dr. Groven,
Aye.
Dr. Jenkins,
Aye.
Dr. Qatar,
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
Aye.
Dr. Mondero,
Yes.
Dr. Rotundo,
Yes.
Dr. Ross, and
Yes.
Dr. Sagar,
Yes.
Dr. Sonoyka,
Aye.
Dr. Walker,
Aye.
and Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
14 ayes.
Thank you. That is adopted. The next one is the travel expense reimbursement. Hopefully there's a lot less expense for Springfield in here. And item 7F, any discussion? If not, how about a motion? We approve that one. Dr. Sagar moves, second by Director Lewis, that item 7F be approved. Joey, quick roll call on that one, please.
Dr. Alvarez, Dr. Carey, Dr. Colson, Dr. Gorman, Dr. Groven,
Aye.
Dr. Jenkins,
Aye.
Dr. Qatar,
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
Yes.
Dr. Mondero,
Yes.
Dr. Rotundo,
Yes.
Dr. Ross, Dr. Ryan,
Yes.
Dr. Sagar,
Yes.
Dr. Sonoyka,
Aye.
Dr. Walker,
Aye.
and Chairman Dillard.
Yes,
14 ayes.
that is approved. New business. Any new business? Director Koter.
Chairman, we're missing one of our colleagues, John Yonan. And so first, just want to say, how much I really appreciate John's friendship, mentorship, leadership. He is absolutely one of the best county engineers that we had, city engineers, and his expertise and perspective, I think, was really valuable to us. And so wanted to make a request that we have a resolution or a letter or the usual customary thanks to John for all of his great work.
We will. And, Director Yonan is a transportation professional. One of the great things that President Preckwinkle did when she got elected to that office was to really have a transportation plan. She's told Leanne and myself, there was never a written plan about transportation in Cook County, and John was at the forefront of doing that. He's a gentleman, but he's just a true transportation professional. He'll still be out there and, to send us his input. But we've got a great replacement. But John did yeoman service and is just a true transportation professional. And we will have a resolution for him at the next meeting. Director Carey.
I want to just make note of what a heck of a year it has been in the transit area here in Chicago, and thank the staff, not just for the budget, but for everything throughout the year. It was challenging for all of us, but I think the staff did a yeoman's job of making it all work. So thank you.
Amen. They were amazing. The hours that they put in also sometimes goes unrecognized. And Rob Nash is an actual citizen of Springfield, Illinois these days. He needs the key to the city of Springfield. But thank you, Pat. You're so right. And just to the board, you've put in extra hours and thought. We have a great board. That's one of the things you're going to find out is we do have a great board, and hopefully many of you, the appointing authorities to the new NEDA board will have the good common sense to put many of you back in place with new additions that are certainly welcome. So thank you. To everybody, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever the persuasion is, Happy Holidays, safe holidays. And next year will be just as exciting, Pat. But we do have people go, what do you think of the new the new law to me. And I said, look, it's a great relief to have, and we have reform, but it's a great relief to finally, I believe, have a system that's been underfunded, but the most efficient in America, but underfunded for decades. So it's just a great relief, and a thank you to the legislature and the governor for, you know, the monies that are forthcoming operationally. So anything else that we have? It's hard to believe, but our next meeting will be January 15th at 9 o'clock in the morning in the year 2026. So that's hard to believe. With that, how about a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
So moved and seconded by Director Kotarek. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Guys have it. Happy holidays, everybody, and thank you so much.